Hi, this is a re-release of a previously recorded episode with Christopher Avery. Several years ago, Christopher and I met and we talked about the responsibility process as well as his leadership gift. Christopher is a keynoter. He spoke in New York City, delivered the keynote for the first Agile Day where we crossed paths, and we recorded this episode. And it's such a gem that I just thought it might be a good idea to re-release it, make it available again for everybody on the Agile.FM community. I hope you enjoy this one. Agile.FM, radio for the Agile community. www.agile.fm.
Perhaps you can just give to the listeners like a little bit of perhaps you can frame how your program, how your ideas link especially to an Agile executive audience.
Well, let's do that. And on the way to that, I want to interject something, and that is just about the nature of Agilists. First of all, anybody listening to this that doesn't know what open space is, of all the types of formats of Agile education you could come to, probably nothing is as exhilarating as open space. And so I think that's why it's popular. I love that I've been in the business of facilitation and people and interactions for over 30 years. And I love showing up at Agile events and having young developers and engineers teaching me stuff they discovered that I was trying to get them to pay attention to 30 years ago. Like almost, about the time they were born, I was trying to get engineers to pay attention. I did my first open space event in the mid to early 90s. I was just trying to remember the exact date, right? And so it's beautiful then to come into Agile in the mid-2000s, 10 or 11, 12 years later, and find Agilists saying, wow, have you heard about this stuff called open space? So it's what I love so much about working in the world of agility is seeing the population that we used to talk about as being introverted and not wanting to leave their screen in order to collaborate is now on the forefront of collaboration and on the forefront of people and interaction, on the forefront of tools for sustainability and for work-life balance and management. And it gives me goosebumps because how could anybody have a better outcome for their career than to see within the time span of their career the stuff that they had pushing uphill, early on and getting poo-pooed, and now it's coming back to them by the same population as saying this is incredible stuff.
That's incredible stuff, right?
Yeah.
So lots of times the open space format is actually applied. I do that in companies within the boundaries of the corporation to improve things. We are applying that in a learning environment throughout our one-day conference, if you want to call that.
Absolutely. So you asked me about my program, my material.
Yes.
I also had a situation recently where I had a small, closely held 40-year-old software company that owned the market in their niche. And when the founder retired, he turned over much of his stock to an ESOP, so 85-person company, employee-owned. And they were in trouble because they owned the highest price point in their market. They had a brand of quality, and they had just shipped 3 releases in a row that required a dot release soon afterwards because of bugs that were discovered by customers. And their primary market was in Japan, and their distributor in Japan actually had to come to the United States and meet with them to tell them what it means in Japan when you have to ship a dot release. Right? And the development organization, the developers, were really in the dumps, and they'd been adopting Agile over a period of a couple of years. And so they decided that the issue of ownership, personal responsibility, was a big important thing here. That, and they had to quit allowing their product owner to push for feature release against quality, which is a whole nother podcast, right?
Right.
But I was hired to go do my 2-day course on creating results-based teams, anytime, anywhere, with anyone. It's been material that I've been gathering since 1991 on all the best strategies and tools and techniques that anybody can use, no matter what role they're in, to give a collaboration the highest opportunity to really gel as a team. And when I say gel as a team, it means you have a great time coming to work and working together. You knock it out of the park, and everybody on the team is willing to go above and beyond what their job description asks them to do, and they do it voluntarily because of their feeling of ownership for this bigger project, this bigger thing that you're doing.
Right.
So what I've accumulated in this class is all the best stuff that I've found to do that. And a lot of people believe that this class offers a repeatable framework for building any team anytime. So it's not just Scrum, it's what Scrum is lacking on the people and interaction side about how to truly build teams. And what we did with this client is not only do that 2-day course, but we added a 2-day open space onto the back of it. Because when I showed up, all these brilliant developers were pissed. And they're thinking, who is this Avery guy here to tell us how to build our software?
Typical, right?
Typical, yeah. And I said, I don't have anything to tell you about how to build your software.
Yeah.
Right? What I'm going to do is try and help you loosen up a little bit and look at some ways that people can start talking to each other at a much higher level of truthfulness and honesty and fun, right? And then I'm going to give you a couple of days to have whatever conversations you want to have about what to do about dot releases.
Yeah. Wow. So you mentioned software.
Right.
What if somebody says, I'm not building software whatsoever?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, right?
No.
We still want to have fun.
We still want to have fun, and team dynamics are team dynamics no matter what your industry is.
The reason I'm asking is there's a big trend. I myself, I'm involved in these kinds of projects is where Agile is applied in non-IT projects, and they might find their way to the Agile New York City Open event as well. They want to talk about Agile in different industries than software.
So this is where I talk to executives, whether they're in software or elsewhere. Right? And a lot of people today are asking, should we go Agile? Should we adopt Agile? And I tell them that's the wrong question. The right question is our business exposed to change, complexity, and uncertainty? Is my job exposed to change, complexity, and uncertainty? If it is, then there are some pretty profound principles that you can apply to bring some sanity to your job, some sanity to your business, no matter what it is, if your business is exposed to change, complexity, and uncertainty. It just happened to be that these principles were codified in the software world. Right?
That's how it all started, at least to my knowledge.
Well, if you think of Agile as starting in the software world, but one way I view Agile is it's a sister or a daughter maybe of TQM, right? Because it uses the continuous improvement, the plan, do, check, act, inspect, and adapt cycle, which started with TQM, which means it's an extension of the empirical approach to work, which started in the 1940s with Dr. Deming, Edwards Deming, who the United States wouldn't listen to him, so he went to Japan for 30 years.
And they listened to him.
And they listened to him because they were in crisis. They were looking for great ideas to dramatically improve productivity.
They were brave.
Yeah. And so he came back to the United States in the 1980s. And the idea of TQM, of course, is instead of inspecting quality out at the end of manufacturing, we pull it forward and build it in up front. Well, Agile, if we look at at QA and test, right? Instead of keeping QA and test at the end of the line,
Right.
and everything's on their shoulders. We didn't ship because of them, and all that kind of stuff. Is we pull QA and test forward, and instead improve everything about how we code. So a lot of people would probably not like to hear me say this, because a lot of people in Agile like to pretend that they invented this, but I see Agile as a sister or a daughter of TQM, and it's the idea of an iterative learning process, that there's no way to analyze and plan to be right. So the only way to be right is to test and experiment and learn, right?
Yeah.
So
Across many industries.
across any industry.
Yeah.
So most of my work is with leadership. And much of my work is about creating a culture that will suck Agile and Lean into it, because as so many of us have found, it's easy to build, it's easy to do one team, it's easy to do a few teams. There are thousands of people across the world now that can know how to do an Agile program, right?
Yeah, has been done multiple times.
Right.
So there's a big knowledge base.
Right. So there's a big knowledge base, and there's a lot of people who are confident and credible, and that's a pretty amazing thing to have achieved over the last 10 years, since the Agile Manifesto in 2001. But the bugaboo is the culture, right? And then for me, the other bugaboo, the other impediment, is that executives, bless their hearts, are steeped in linear thinking, that which is the management science equivalent of waterfall. Right? And even kids, I'd say even anybody under 25 to 30 years old, throughout their entire academic career and into the workforce, they were probably steeped much more in linear and waterfall thinking than in agile thinking. And so executives have 40, 50, 60 years of embedded knowledge about figure it all out and get it right first, and then roll it out, right? No matter what it is, what kind of operation it is. And my job is to go to them and apologize for the fact that the world changed completely while they were still using something that was already obsolete.
Right.
Right? And that now there's a huge population of kids, 25 to 35 years old, who are extraordinarily disciplined at Kanban, at work in process, at sustainable pace, at not starting stuff but finishing stuff, at decision making, at consensus, at collaboration. And you know what? They're going to be happy to come take your job. That's what I tell executives. If you're not willing to find out how to operate in conditions of change, complexity, and uncertainty, which requires iteration and thin slicing of whatever your leadership or change program is.
Yeah.
Right? And learning.
Right. Different cultures in generations, right?
Right.
So we will have a bit of everything at this Agile New York City Open. Not prepared, that's the nature of the open space event.
Right.
We have set the stage for the theme.
Mm-hmm.
We're inviting executives, we're inviting anybody.
Yep.
We're inviting folks from software industry, we're inviting anybody from other industries who want to talk about Agile topics in regards to executive agility and how to implement that. It is very interesting though, earlier in the, I think in the 1990s, the Agile movement very often came bottom up, where teams said, we're not going to work this way any longer. We're going to do things a little bit different. At that point, it was called iterative, lightweight approaches.
Right.
Now it's very often top-down, where executives are being sold already on the idea or being tasked to implement agility in an organization. How are your thoughts? How is your program? How are your courses in regards to bottom-up versus top-down approaches? Because at the end of the day, it's going to hit the middle management, right?
Right.
So somehow the middle management is involved in large corporation run in a traditional fashion.
Right. So
Is your work more like targeting to folks being tasked top down, or is your work more from the bottom up, or is it actually both directions?
Well, it's both. So I don't bring anything unique to the table in terms of adopting Agile with teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that there's Joe Krebs and hundreds of other people around the world who are very proficient in introducing Agile, Scrum, Lean to teams and even to programs,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't believe that I have anything unique there. I love the work and I love working at that level and doing it, but my uniqueness is that I have a repeatable, high ROI program for creating a culture of ownership, a culture of personal responsibility that will suck Agile and Lean into it. And so many of us believe that the impediment to Agile adoption today is culture, right? So after we get a few teams going, we try and expand. And because Agile requires high collaboration cross functions, and its tentacles reach into the business and beyond, then the cultural antibodies come out and start pushing back, right? And so rather than have the fight be a right-wrong fight about right process or right method, my interest is in helping the leadership look at how do we create a culture where people recognize the difference between blaming and justifying, telling stories, or feeling bad or feeling obligated versus actually stepping up and facing a challenge, facing an impediment, putting learning into high gear, looking at the difference between resistance versus change, or defensiveness versus learning, or growth versus coping, which the responsibility process work that I've been working on for 20 years does. Yeah. And that then creates an opportunity for me to talk to executives, because I only work at the leadership level when I'm doing this. That allows me to talk to executives about iterative thinking. And what I've found is that most, I'm going to go out on a limb here, 99% of execs who are not doing Agile think they understand it and don't.
Wow.
Is that your experience?
Wow, 99% is...
it's a big number.
I don't know if you both fit on that limb out there, but 99%.
95%, right? 19 out of 20.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've been through a briefing or two, or read about it, right? But they're still steeped in linear thinking. Right? The way they think, the way their mind is, I don't want to use the term wired, because it can be, they can change their thinking and they can change their paradigm. We know that people can change their paradigm, but they're deeply anchored in linear thinking, and so it's challenging. And so, for instance, one of the things that I'll do is I'll offer to, well, maybe I should say, in terms of what I do in my program, there's a lot of people, Joe, who think that they have the answer to enterprise Agile. What I've seen is most of them are engineering solutions. They're design solutions, that if we structure it this way or process this way, it'll work. And what I know is that organization change management is messy and ugly, and you can't just redesign an organization according to the perfect engineered solution. Right? And what I've done is I've gone out and I've looked for who are the people in the world that are doing the best job at organizational change management that is compatible with Agile. And what I found is that there are people using Agile principles and have been using Agile principles for decades to do organizational change management. And there are people who use Agile principles and have been for decades, although it's not called Agile, it's not called Scrum. They didn't even know Scrum and Agile existed. They just discovered the same dynamics in their own way. There are people using it for executive strategic management and for fast growth companies. So I'm going to be doing this one-day program on leading agile change for executives, in which I'm going to essentially say, okay, here's Agile. You've probably heard a fair amount about it, pretty intrigued. Right? Now, I'd like to introduce you to rapid results organizational change management and their model. And I'd like to introduce you to the rhythm approach from Vern Harnish on fast growth strategic management. And then I'd like us to compare and contrast what you see in these three models. And that's what we're going to do in leading agile change. I'm going to essentially teach executives what I've learned in 30 years of looking for true organizational change practices that work instead of organizational change practices that create resistance, that create pushback, that put a whole bunch of cost up front and then take a long time to implement before you can see any results.
Right.
So I'm kind of excited about bringing this program to New York City and seeing what executives have to say about it.
Right, and I just want to, come back to that 99, 95% one more time. I do think that, I personally think that a lot of executives might understand the basic language, the vocabulary of agility. What's often missing is that Agile is a journey. It starts somewhere, it ends, or might be moving for a very long time. What you start with might not be the same as you would be doing 6 months later. How is your program, like just in a nutshell here, like does your program address that journey and work with executives and work with teams on starting the journey, but not only starting, but also, continuing the journey?
Actually, I think, and you're going to have to verify, I think you've posed the $1 million question when it comes to enterprise or big Agile or large-scale change towards Agile. Because what we've seen happening over the last 18 months or so as larger and larger and larger companies have gotten the buzz, right? And they've said, we want to bring that flexibility, that nimbleness, that closer to the customer, closer to the business results into our company. What we've learned is that these big buyers, they like very prescriptive change. They want to know what the 24-month, 36-month rollout process is going to look like. And any Agile coach worth their salt doesn't believe in prescriptive change, doesn't believe that they can plan a 24 or 36-month rollout, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a communication mismatch because all over the world, when Agile experts are meeting with very large customers, they're looking silly to the customers when they say, well, we're going to plan, we're going to plan the first 3 to 6 months.
Right.
And then we're going to replan. Right. And
you're like, that's not strategic. You're not thinking strategic. You're only thinking the next 3 months.
Right. So where does that come from? Where that comes from is being steeped in the linear thinking, right? Of seeing the whole thing first up front, seeing the whole analysis and the whole plan, and then rolling it out.
Right.
And so I think that the question that you ask me is, I don't have an answer for it. My answer is, how do you sell non-prescriptive change to people who want to buy prescriptive change? And that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay.
I mean, that's,
It's, absolutely, yeah. No, it's the beginning of a journey.
Right.
But you got to start the journey on the right foot.
Right. And my fear is that too many companies are going to hire somebody that says, sure, I can sell you a 36-month plan or a 24-month plan. And it's going to be big and expensive, and it's not going to work, right? That's my fear.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out how do you sell non-prescriptive change to people who want prescriptive change.
Right. I just spoke with ChristopherAvery.com. Thank you,
That's
Christopher.
right. Yeah, so my website's same as my name, Christopher Avery.
And your Twitter, unfortunately, we had to drop the Y, right?
Right. Twitter doesn't have enough initials, so it's Christopher Aver. Without the Y.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So connect with him, follow him, and come to our event. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for listening to Agile.FM, the radio for the Agile community. I'm your host, Joe Krebs. If you're interested in more programming and additional podcasts, please go to www.agile.fm. Talk to you soon.